Ugly millionaire pays a homeless young woman to pretend to be his fiancée for a dinner with his parents. When they saw the woman, they instantly realized that something wasn't right. Greg Thornton stared at his reflection in the mirror, his fingers fumbling with his silk tie. At 35, he was a successful tech entrepreneur, his net worth soaring well into the millions. Yet as he adjusted his designer suit, all he could focus on were his protruding ears and slightly crooked nose. He sighed, wondering for the thousandth time how someone like him had managed to amass such wealth. The spacious penthouse around him was a testament to his financial success. All sleek lines, modern art, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the San Francisco skyline. But to Greg, it felt more like a gilded cage than a home. He'd filled it with expensive furniture and gadgets, hoping they'd fill the void he felt inside. They never did. His phone buzzed, the screen lighting up with a message from his mother. "Don't forget, dinner at 7. Your father and I are looking forward to meeting this fiancé of yours." Greg's stomach churned. There was no fiancé, of course. It was a lie born out of desperation, a futile attempt to get his parents off his back about settling down. Now, with less than 5 hours until dinner, he was in a panic. He grabbed his keys and headed out, his mind racing. He needed a date, someone who could convincingly play the role of a successful, sophisticated woman worthy of a millionaire's affection. But where would he find someone on such short notice? As he walked down the bustling city street, lost in thought, he nearly tripped over a young woman sitting on the sidewalk. She was holding a cardboard sign that read, "Lost everything. Any help appreciated." Greg stopped, really looking at her for the first time. Despite her disheveled appearance, there was a quiet dignity about her. Her blue eyes were clear and intelligent, her features delicate. With a bit of polishing, she could easily pass for the type of woman his parents would approve of. An idea began to form in Greg's mind. It was crazy, possibly even cruel, but he was desperate. He crouched down next to her. "Excuse me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have an unusual proposition for you." The woman looked at him warily. "I'm listening." Greg took a deep breath. "I need someone to pretend to be my fiancée for a dinner with my parents tonight. I'll pay you $5,000 for a few hours of your time." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Greg nodded. "I know it sounds insane, but I'm in a bind. All you'd have to do is clean up, wear some nice clothes, and act the part for one evening." The woman was silent for a long moment, studying Greg's face. Finally, she spoke. "My name is Anna, and I think you're out of your mind." She paused, then added, "But I'm desperate enough to consider it. What exactly would this involve?" Greg felt a mix of relief and anxiety wash over him. "We'd get you cleaned up, buy you a nice outfit, and come up with a backstory. Then we'd have dinner with my parents at their house. You just need to be charming and pretend we're in love." Anna stood up slowly, brushing off her worn jeans. "And you're willing to pay $5,000 for this?" Greg nodded. "Half now, half after dinner." Anna took a deep breath, conflict evident on her face. "I can't believe I'm saying this, but okay, I'll do it." As they walked towards a nearby department store, Greg felt a mix of relief and guilt. He was using this woman's desperation for his own gain, but he pushed the thought aside. It was just for one night, he told himself. What could possibly go wrong? Little did Greg know that this impulsive decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change both their lives forever. As they entered the store, the first step in Anna's transformation, neither of them could have predicted the challenges, revelations, and unexpected connections that lay ahead. Anna stood in the dressing room, staring at her reflection in disbelief. The woman looking back at her was almost unrecognizable. Her once matted hair now fell in soft waves around her shoulders, and the designer dress hugged her figure in all the right places. She ran her hands over the silky fabric, marveling at how different she felt. "Everything okay in there?" Greg's voice called from outside. "Yes, I think so," Anna replied, her voice shaky. She took a deep breath and stepped out. Greg's eyes widened as he saw her. For a moment, he forgot to breathe. Anna looked stunning, every bit the sophisticated fiancée he had imagined. "You look amazing," he managed to say. A faint blush colored Anna's cheeks. "Thank you. It feels strange, but nice." As they left the store, bags of additional outfits in hand, Greg felt a twinge of guilt. He was essentially asking this woman to lie, to put on a performance. But as he glanced at Anna, noting the way she held herself a little taller now, he wondered if perhaps this arrangement might benefit her too. "We should probably go over our story," Greg said as they hailed a taxi. "How we met, how long we've been together, that sort of thing." Anna nodded, her expression turning serious. "Right. What did you have in mind?" As the taxi wove through the city streets, Greg and Anna crafted their fictional romance. They decided they'd met at a charity gala 2 years ago, bonding over their shared love of contemporary art. Their first date had been at a little Italian restaurant in North Beach. Greg proposed 6 months ago during a weekend trip to Napa Valley. "Do you think your parents will believe all this?" Anna asked, a hint of worry in her voice. Greg sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I hope so. They can be challenging, always pushing me to be more, do more. Nothing's ever quite good enough for them." Anna's expression softened. "That must be difficult. Is that why you're doing this? To impress them?" Greg nodded, feeling suddenly vulnerable. "I guess I just wanted them to see me as successful in every aspect of life, not just financially." "I understand," Anna said softly. "We all want to make our parents proud." There was a moment of silence, a shared understanding passing between them. Then Greg cleared his throat. "So, tell me about yourself. The real you, I mean. It might help make our story more convincing if I know more about you." Anna's eyes clouded over for a moment. "There's not much to tell. I used to own a small bookstore, but it went under during the pandemic. I couldn't keep up with the rent and, well, here I am." Greg felt a pang of sympathy. "I'm sorry to hear that. It must have been tough." Anna shrugged, but Greg could see the pain in her eyes. "Life happens. You just have to keep moving forward, right?" As they arrived at Greg's penthouse to finish getting ready, both felt a mix of anticipation and nervousness. Greg fumbled with his keys, his hands shaking slightly. "Are you okay?" Anna asked, placing a gentle hand on his arm. Greg took a deep breath. "Just nervous, I guess. My parents can be intense." Anna squeezed his arm reassuringly. "We're in this together now. We'll get through it." As they entered the penthouse, Greg felt a strange sense of comfort in Anna's presence. Despite the unconventional circumstances of their meeting, there was something about her that put him at ease. They spent the next hour going over final details, practicing their story and getting to know each other better. As the time to leave for dinner approached, Greg found himself wishing, just for a moment, that their story was real. "Ready?" he asked, holding out his hand to Anna. She took it, her palm warm against his. "As I'll ever be." As they left the penthouse, neither Greg nor Anna could shake the feeling that this evening would change everything. Little did they know just how right they were. The sleek black car pulled up to a stately mansion in Pacific Heights, its engine purring to a stop. Greg took a deep breath, his knuckles white as he gripped the steering wheel. Beside him, Anna smoothed her dress, her face a mask of calm that belied the nervous energy radiating from her. "This is it," Greg said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you ready?" Anna nodded, offering him a reassuring smile. "We've got this. Remember, we're madly in love." As they approached the front door, Greg's hand found the small of Anna's back, guiding her gently. The touch, though part of their act, sent an unexpected shiver through both of them. Before Greg could ring the doorbell, the door swung open, revealing a tall, distinguished-looking man with salt and pepper hair. "Gregory," the man said, his tone formal. "You're right on time." "Hello, Father," Greg replied, his voice tight. "This is Anna, my fiancée." Harold Thornton's piercing gaze swept over Anna, assessing her from head to toe. "A pleasure," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "Please, come in." As they stepped into the foyer, a woman's voice called out from deeper in the house. "Is that Gregory?" "Bring them into the living room, Harold." The living room was a study in opulence, with antique furniture and priceless artwork adorning the walls. Margaret Thornton, a petite woman with perfectly coiffed silver hair, rose from an elegant chaise lounge as they entered. "Oh, Gregory!" she exclaimed, air-kissing both his cheeks. "And this must be Anna. How lovely to finally meet you, dear." Anna stepped forward, extending her hand with a graceful smile. "It's wonderful to meet you both. Greg has told me so much about you." Margaret's eyebrows rose slightly. "Has he now? How interesting. Please, sit down. Dinner will be ready shortly." As they settled onto a plush sofa, Harold poured drinks from a crystal decanter. "So, Anna," he began, his tone deceptively casual. "Greg tells us you met at a charity gala. Which one was it again?" Anna's heart raced, but she kept her composure. "It was the annual fundraiser for the San Francisco Museum of Modern Art. Greg and I bonded over our shared love of contemporary art." "I see," Harold nodded, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And what is it you do for a living, Anna?" Greg tensed beside her, but Anna was ready. "I run a small art consultancy firm. I help private collectors and corporations build their art portfolios." Margaret leaned forward, her interest piqued. "How fascinating. And where did you study art history?" "I actually studied business at Stanford," Anna replied smoothly, "but I've always had a passion for art. I interned at several galleries during college and worked my way up from there." Greg watched in awe as Anna fielded question after question with poise and confidence. She wove their fabricated story seamlessly with her own experiences, creating a narrative that was both believable and impressive. As dinner progressed, Greg found himself relaxing slightly. Anna was charming, intelligent, and seemed to be winning his parents over. But just as he thought they might be in the clear, Harold cleared his throat. "Anna, dear," he said, his voice deceptively gentle, "I hope you don't mind, but I took the liberty of looking into your background a bit." Greg froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Anna's smile faltered for just a moment before she regained her composure. "Oh," she said, her voice steady. "What did you find?" Harold's eyes glinted. "It's curious. I couldn't seem to find any record of your art consultancy firm. In fact, I couldn't find much about you at all." The room fell silent. Greg's heart pounded in his chest as he looked from his father to Anna, unsure of what to do or say. Anna set down her fork, her gaze meeting Harold's unflinchingly. "Mr. Thornton," she began, her voice calm but firm, "I understand your concern for your son, but I assure you, my feelings for Greg are genuine. As for my business, it's still in its early stages. I've been focusing on building client relationships rather than an online presence." Greg reached for Anna's hand under the table, squeezing it gently. She squeezed back, a silent acknowledgement of their shared predicament. Margaret cleared her throat, clearly sensing the tension. "Well, I'm sure you're both doing your best. Now, who would like some dessert?" As Margaret bustled off to the kitchen, the air in the dining room remained thick with unspoken suspicions and mounting anxiety. Greg and Anna exchanged a look, both realizing that their carefully constructed facade was beginning to crumble. The real test, it seemed, was only just beginning. The tension in the room was palpable as Margaret returned with a beautifully decorated cheesecake. She served each person a slice, the clink of silverware against fine china, the only sound breaking the uncomfortable silence. Greg cleared his throat, desperate to steer the conversation to safer ground. "Mother, this cheesecake is delicious. Is it a new recipe?" Margaret's face brightened slightly. "Why, yes, it is. I'm glad you noticed, Gregory. Anna, do you enjoy baking?" Anna, grateful for the change of subject, nodded enthusiastically. "I do, actually, though I must admit I'm more of a cook than a baker. There's something about the precision required in baking that I find challenging. Oh? Margaret leaned forward, interested. What's your specialty in the kitchen, then? I make a mean risotto, Anna replied with a small smile. And I've been told my homemade pasta sauce is to die for. Greg, seeing an opportunity, jumped in. It's true. Anna's cooking is incredible. She made this amazing osso buco for our 6-month anniversary. For a moment, the atmosphere lightened. Even Harold seemed to relax slightly, taking a sip of his after-dinner brandy, but the reprieve was short-lived. So, Anna, Harold began, his tone deceptively casual, tell us about your family. Where are you from originally? Anna hesitated for a split second, her fork pausing midway to her mouth. I grew up in a small town in Oregon, she said, sticking as close to the truth as possible. My parents owned a small bookstore there. How quaint, Margaret remarked. And are they excited about the engagement? Greg felt Anna tense beside him. They hadn't prepared for questions about her family. He opened his mouth to intervene, but Anna spoke first. Actually, she said softly, my parents passed away a few years ago. Car accident. The room fell silent. Greg reached for Anna's hand under the table, squeezing it gently. The pain in her voice sounded all too real, and he wondered if there was more truth to her words than he knew. I'm so sorry, dear, Margaret said, her voice softening for the first time that evening. That must have been terribly difficult for you. Anna nodded, her eyes glistening slightly. It was, but I've been fortunate to find a new family with Greg. Greg felt a lump form in his throat. He knew it was part of their act, but something in Anna's voice made it feel genuine. Harold, however, remained skeptical. It's curious, he mused, swirling the brandy in his glass, that we haven't heard about you before, Anna. Gregory has always been so open with us about his life. Greg felt a flash of anger. Maybe that's because every time I've introduced you to someone I care about, you've done your best to drive them away. He snapped, surprising even himself with his outburst. The room fell silent once more, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Margaret looked shocked, while Harold's face darkened with anger. Now, Gregory, his mother began, but Greg cut her off. No, Mother. I'm tired of this. I'm a grown man, successful in my own right. I don't need your approval for every aspect of my life. Anna placed a gentle hand on Greg's arm. Greg, it's okay, she said softly. Your parents are just concerned about you. Harold's eyes narrowed. Are we? Or do we have good reason to be suspicious of a woman who seems to have appeared out of nowhere? Greg stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. That's enough. Anna and I are leaving. Thank you for dinner, Mother. As Greg helped Anna with her coat, Harold called out from the dining room. This isn't over, Gregory. We will get to the bottom of this. The drive back to Greg's penthouse was silent, both of them lost in their own thoughts. As they pulled into the parking garage, Greg turned to Anna. I'm so sorry about all of that, he said, his voice heavy with regret. I never should have put you in that position. Anna was quiet for a moment, then turned to face him. Greg, I need to tell you something true. Greg's heart raced as he met Anna's gaze, wondering what revelations the evening would bring next. Greg and Anna sat in the parked car, the silence between them heavy with unspoken words. The soft glow of the garage lights cast shadows across their faces, highlighting the worry lines etched on Greg's forehead and the hesitation in Anna's eyes. What is it? Greg asked gently, turning to face her fully. Anna took a deep breath, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her dress. Greg, I wasn't entirely honest earlier. About my parents, I mean. Greg felt a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Go on, he encouraged softly. They're not dead, Anna said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I haven't spoken to them in years. We had a falling out when my bookstore failed. They They thought I was foolish for trying to run a business on my own. Said I should have listened to them and gotten a real job instead. Greg's expression softened. Anna, I'm so sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult. She nodded, blinking back tears. It was. I guess when your mother asked about them, it was easier to say they were gone than to explain the truth. I understand, Greg said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. Family can be complicated. Anna gave him a wan smile. That's an understatement. But Greg, there's more. Your father, he was right to be suspicious. I'm not who I've been pretending to be tonight. Greg's heart raced. What do you mean? I mean, I'm not some successful art consultant. I told you the truth earlier. I owned a small bookstore, and when it failed, I lost everything. I've been homeless for the past 8 months trying to get back on my feet. The revelation hung in the air between them. Greg sat back in his seat, processing this information. Part of him felt betrayed, but another part, a larger part, felt an overwhelming sense of empathy. Anna, he said finally, why didn't you tell me this before? She laughed humorlessly. Would you have still asked me to pretend to be your fiancé if you'd known? Greg considered this for a moment. Honestly, I don't know, but I wish you had felt you could trust me with the truth. Anna's eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, Greg. I never meant to deceive you beyond what you asked of me. It's just, when I put on these clothes, when I stepped into this role, I felt like I could be that person again, the person I was before everything fell apart. Greg felt a lump form in his throat. He recognized that feeling all too well, the desire to be someone else, someone better, if only for a little while. I understand, he said softly, and I'm not angry. If anything, I'm impressed. You handled yourself incredibly well tonight, considering the circumstances. Anna wiped away a stray tear. Thank you, and thank you for not judging me. I know this complicates things with your parents. Greg shook his head. Don't worry about that. My parents, well, you saw how they are. Always pushing, always judging. Maybe it's time I stood up to them for real, not just with some elaborate charade. They sat in silence for a moment, both lost in thought. Then Greg spoke again, his voice determined. Anna, I want to help you, not just with tonight's payment, but really help you get back on your feet. Anna's eyes widened. Greg, no, you don't have to do that. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. I know I don't have to, Greg insisted, but I want to. You're smart, capable, and kind. You shouldn't be on the streets. Let me help you find a job, a place to stay. Anna hesitated, clearly torn. I don't know what to say. That's incredibly generous of you, but nothing, Greg said firmly. Consider it a thank you for helping me realize some important truths about myself and my relationship with my parents. A small smile played at the corners of Anna's lips. You're a good man, Greg Thornton. Awkward, perhaps, but good. Greg chuckled, feeling some of the tension dissipate. Well, I'll take that as a compliment. Now, what do you say we head upstairs and figure out our next move? I have a feeling my father wasn't bluffing about getting to the bottom of this. Anna nodded, her expression turning serious. You're right. We should prepare for whatever comes next. As they exited the car and made their way to the elevator, both Greg and Anna felt a shift in their dynamic. What had started as a simple business arrangement had become something more complex, more real. Neither of them knew exactly what the future held, but they both sensed that their lives had changed irrevocably over the course of one eventful evening. The soft glow of the city lights filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Greg's penthouse, casting long shadows across the living room. Greg and Anna sat on opposite ends of the plush sofa, both lost in thought. The events of the evening weighed heavily on their minds. Greg broke the silence first. So what do we do now? Anna sighed, running a hand through her hair. I'm not sure. Your father seemed pretty determined to uncover the truth. Yeah, that's Harold Thornton for you, Greg said with a wry smile. He's like a dog with a bone when he thinks he's onto something. Anna leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees. Greg, I think we need to come clean. The truth will come out eventually, and it'll be worse if we keep up this charade. Greg nodded slowly, considering her words. You're right, but I'm worried about what that means for you. My parents aren't exactly the forgiving type. I appreciate your concern, Anna said softly, but I've been through worse. I can handle whatever comes my way. Greg felt a surge of admiration for her resilience. Okay, so we tell the truth. But how? And when? As they discussed their options, Greg's phone buzzed insistently on the coffee table. He glanced at the screen and groaned. It's my father. Again. Anna raised an eyebrow. You should probably answer it. Greg took a deep breath and picked up the phone. Hello, Father. Harold's voice came through, crisp and authoritative. Gregory, I expect you and Anna at our house tomorrow at noon. We have matters to discuss. Before Greg could respond, the line went dead. He stared at the phone in disbelief. Well, I guess that decides the when for us. Anna nodded, her expression a mix of resignation and determination. Then we'd better prepare for tomorrow. They spent the next few hours going over their story, deciding what details to reveal and how to present them. As the night wore on, Greg found himself increasingly impressed by Anna's quick thinking and strategic mind. You know, he said during a lull in their planning, you really would make an excellent businesswoman. Have you ever considered getting back into it? Anna's eyes lit up for a moment before dimming again. I've thought about it, but starting over from scratch, it's daunting. Greg leaned forward, an idea forming. What if you had help? Backing from someone who believes in you? Anna looked at him skeptically. Greg, you've already done more than enough. You don't need to. I want to, Greg interrupted. Look, I have the resources, and you have the drive and the ideas. We could make a great team. Anna was quiet for a moment, considering his words. That's incredibly generous. But why would you do that for someone you barely know? Greg shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Call it intuition, or maybe I'm just tired of my wealth not making a real difference in anyone's life. As they continued to talk, their conversation shifted from business propositions to personal stories. Greg shared tales of growing up under the weight of his parents' expectations, while Anna opened up about her struggles after losing her bookstore. Hours passed unnoticed, and as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, they realized they'd been up all night. We should probably get some rest before facing the Inquisition, Greg said, stifling a yawn. Anna nodded, her eyes heavy with fatigue. You're right. And Greg, thank you for everything. As Greg showed Anna to the guest room, he felt a strange mix of emotions. Anxiety about the coming confrontation with his parents, certainly, but also a sense of excitement and possibility he hadn't felt in years. Lying in his bed, staring at the ceiling, Greg realized that regardless of how things went with his parents, something fundamental had shifted in his life. He'd connected with someone in a way he never had before, and he was determined not to let this opportunity slip away. As sleep finally claimed him, Greg's last thoughts were of Anna and the potential future they might build together. A future based on honesty, mutual respect, and the shared experience of one very unusual evening. The next morning, Greg and Anna stood side by side on the Thorntons' doorstep, both feeling a mix of trepidation and resolve. Greg glanced at Anna, admiring how composed she looked despite the circumstances. She caught his eye and gave him a small, reassuring smile. Ready? He asked, his hand poised to ring the doorbell. Anna nodded. As I'll ever be. The door swung open, revealing Margaret Thornton, her face a mask of polite neutrality. Gregory, Anna, please come in. They followed her into the living room, where Harold was already seated, his posture rigid and eyes sharp. The atmosphere was thick with tension as Greg and Anna took their seats on the sofa across from Harold's armchair. "Well," Harold began, his voice clipped, "I believe we have some matters to discuss." Greg took a deep breath, steeling himself. "Yes, we do. But before you say anything, Father, there's something Anna and I need to tell you." Harold raised an eyebrow but remained silent, waiting. Greg looked at Anna, who gave him a slight nod. He turned back to his parents. "The truth is, Anna and I aren't engaged. We're not even dating. I hired her to pretend to be my fiancée for last night's dinner." The silence that followed was deafening. Margaret gasped softly, her hand flying to her mouth, while Harold's face darkened with anger. "I knew it," Harold said, his voice low and dangerous. "I knew there was something off about this whole situation. Gregory, how could you lie to us like this?" Before Greg could respond, Anna spoke up. "Mr. and Mrs. Thornton, please don't blame Greg entirely. I agreed to this arrangement. We were both wrong to deceive you, and we're here to apologize and tell you the whole truth." Margaret looked between Greg and Anna, confusion evident on her face. "But why?" "Gregory, why would you do something like this?" Greg felt a lump form in his throat. Because I was tired of disappointing you, of never being good enough. I thought if I could show you I had found someone successful and sophisticated, you'd finally be proud of me." The room fell silent again as his words sank in. Harold's expression softened slightly, a flicker of something, regret perhaps, crossing his face. Anna continued, her voice steady. "There's more you should know. I'm not a successful art consultant. I used to own a small bookstore, but I lost everything when it failed. Until yesterday, I was homeless." Margaret's eyes widened in shock, while Harold leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Greg offered to help me get back on my feet," Anna added quickly. "He's been incredibly kind and generous, despite the unconventional way we met." Greg nodded, finding his voice again. "I want to help Anna restart her business. She's smart, capable, and has great ideas. I believe in her potential." Harold and Margaret exchanged a look, seemingly at a loss for words. Finally, Harold spoke, his voice softer than before. "Gregory, we had no idea you felt this way, that you thought you needed to go to such lengths to impress us." Margaret reached out, placing her hand on Greg's knee. "Sweetheart, we've always been proud of you. Perhaps we haven't expressed it well, but everything we've done has been because we want the best for you." Greg felt tears prickling at the corners of his eyes. "I know you mean well, but sometimes it feels like nothing I do is ever good enough." Harold sighed deeply, running a hand through his hair. "We've made mistakes, son. We pushed too hard, expected too much. I'm sorry we made you feel this way." The tension in the room began to dissipate as the Thorntons continued to talk, years of misunderstandings and unspoken feelings finally coming to light. Anna sat quietly, offering supportive glances to Greg when he needed them. As the conversation wound down, Harold turned his attention to Anna. "Young lady, while I don't approve of the deception, I must say I'm impressed by your poise and honesty now. Perhaps Gregory's instincts about you weren't entirely wrong." Anna blushed slightly. "Thank you, Mr. Thornton. I promise you, my intentions now are completely honorable. I want to rebuild my life, and Greg's offer of help means more than I can express." Margaret smiled warmly at Anna. "Well, dear, it seems you've had quite an impact on our Gregory. Perhaps this unusual meeting was meant to be, in its own way." As Greg looked around at his parents and Anna, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The truth was out, and while there was still much to discuss and work through, he felt hopeful for the first time in years. He realized that sometimes the most unexpected circumstances could lead to the most meaningful connections and personal growth. In the weeks that followed the revealing conversation at the Thornton residence, Greg and Anna found themselves embarking on an unexpected journey of personal growth and professional collaboration. The penthouse that had once felt like a gilded cage to Greg now buzzed with energy and purpose. One sunny afternoon, Greg and Anna sat at the dining table, surrounded by papers, laptops, and empty coffee mugs. They were deep in discussion about Anna's business plan for a new bookstore concept. "So, you're thinking of combining a traditional bookstore with a cafe and co-working space?" Greg asked, his eyes scanning the detailed proposal Anna had put together. Anna nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. The idea is to create a community hub where people can browse books, work on their laptops, or attend literary events. It's about fostering a love for reading while adapting to modern work habits." Greg leaned back in his chair, impressed. "I like it. It's innovative yet grounded in your passion for books. Have you thought about potential locations?" "I've been researching areas with a good mix of residential and commercial spaces," Anna replied, pulling up a map on her laptop. "This neighborhood here has a lot of potential. It's up and coming with a diverse demographic that I think would appreciate this concept." As they continued to discuss the finer points of the business plan, Greg found himself marveling at the change in Anna. Gone was the hesitant, down-on-her-luck woman he'd met on the street. In her place was a confident, driven entrepreneur with a clear vision for her future. "You know," Greg said during a lull in their conversation, "I'm really impressed with how quickly you've put all this together. You've got a real talent for business planning." Anna blushed slightly at the compliment. "Thanks, Greg. I guess I just needed the opportunity to prove to myself that I could do it. Your support has meant everything." Greg felt a warmth spread through his chest at her words. "I'm glad I could help. But this is all you, Anna. You're the one with the vision and the drive." As the afternoon wore on, their discussion shifted from business to more personal matters. They found themselves sharing stories from their pasts, hopes for the future, and the challenges they'd faced along the way. "I have to admit," Anna said, a hint of vulnerability in her voice, "I'm still a little scared. What if this fails like my last attempt?" Greg reached across the table, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. "That's a normal fear to have. But remember, you're not alone this time. You've got me, and now my parents, in your corner." Anna smiled gratefully. "You're right. It's just hard to shake off those old insecurities sometimes." "I understand that all too well," Greg replied, thinking back to his own struggles with self-doubt. "But look how far you've come already. You're going to do great things, Anna. I believe in you." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow through the penthouse windows, Greg and Anna decided to take a break from their work. They moved to the balcony, each nursing a glass of wine as they looked out over the city skyline. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Anna mused, her eyes taking in the twinkling lights of the city below. Greg nodded, but found his gaze drawn more to Anna than the view. He was struck by how at ease she seemed now, how she carried herself with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. "Anna," he said softly, "I want you to know that regardless of how the business turns out, I'm glad we met. You've brought a new perspective into my life that I didn't even know I was missing." Anna turned to him, her eyes shining with emotion. "I feel the same way, Greg. You took a chance on me when you had no reason to, and it's changed everything. Thank you for believing in me." As they stood there, the city humming with life below them, Greg felt a sense of contentment he'd never experienced before. He realized that in trying to help Anna rebuild her life, he'd inadvertently started to rebuild his own. The future was still uncertain, full of challenges and potential pitfalls. But for the first time in a long while, both Greg and Anna felt ready to face whatever came their way. They had found in each other not just a business partner, but a friend, a confidant, and perhaps the potential for something more. As the night deepened around them, they continued to talk, laugh, and dream. Two souls connected by an unlikely twist of fate, standing on the precipice of a new chapter in their lives. 6 months had passed since that fateful dinner at the Thorntons, and the transformation in both Greg and Anna's lives was remarkable. The once empty storefront on a bustling street corner now bore a stylish sign that read, "Chapter and Verse, Books, Brews, and Beyond." Inside, the space hummed with activity. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with carefully curated titles. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee wafted from the cafe area, where patrons sipped lattes while tapping away on laptops. In the back, a cozy event space hosted a local author's reading, the soft murmur of voices adding to the warm atmosphere. Anna moved through the store, greeting customers and straightening books with a confident smile. She paused at the counter where Greg was chatting with a regular customer about their latest tech venture. "How's everything looking?" Greg asked as the customer moved away. Anna's eyes sparkled with pride. "Better than I ever imagined. We're already turning a profit, and the community response has been incredible." Greg grinned, feeling a surge of admiration for her accomplishment. "I knew you could do it. This place is amazing, Anna." As they stood there taking in the bustling scene around them, the bell above the door chimed. Greg looked up to see his parents entering the store, their eyes widening as they took in the vibrant atmosphere. "Mom, Dad," Greg called out, waving them over. "What do you think?" Harold and Margaret made their way to the counter, looking around with obvious approval. "It's wonderful," Margaret exclaimed, reaching out to squeeze Anna's hand. "You've done an incredible job, dear." Harold nodded in agreement. "I must say I'm impressed. This is a far cry from the typical bookstore. You've really tapped into something unique here." Anna beamed at the praise. "Thank you both. It means a lot to hear that from you." As they chatted, Greg couldn't help but marvel at the change in his parents' demeanor. Gone was the constant criticism and pressure. Instead, there was a genuine warmth and interest in both his and Anna's endeavors. "Son," Harold said, turning to Greg, "your mother and I have been talking. We'd like to host a dinner next week to celebrate the success of Chapter and Verse. Perhaps you could invite some of your business associates? It would be a good networking opportunity for Anna." Greg felt a mix of surprise and gratitude at the offer. "That sounds great, Dad. What do you think, Anna?" Anna nodded enthusiastically. "I'd love that. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Thornton." As his parents moved to explore the store, Greg turned to Anna. "Can you believe how much has changed? 6 months ago, I was hiring you to pretend to be my fiancée. Now look at us." Anna laughed softly. "It's been quite a journey, hasn't it? I never could have imagined this is where we'd end up." Their eyes met, and for a moment the bustle of the store faded away. Greg felt his heart skip a beat as he realized how much Anna had come to mean to him. "Anna," he began, his voice soft, "I've been thinking—" But before he could finish, they were interrupted by a customer seeking help finding a specific book. Anna gave Greg an apologetic smile before moving to assist them. As Greg watched her expertly navigate the shelves, pointing out recommendations along the way, he felt a sense of contentment wash over him. This venture had brought purpose not just to Anna's life, but to his own as well. He'd found a partner in every sense of the word, someone who challenged him, inspired him, and made him want to be a better person. The day wore on, filled with the steady stream of customers, impromptu book discussions, and the constant hum of the espresso machine. As closing time approached, Greg and Anna found themselves alone in the store, tidying up for the night. "So," Anna said, a playful glint in her eye, "what were you going to say earlier?" "Before we got interrupted?" Greg felt a flutter of nerves in his stomach. "Oh, that. I was just thinking, maybe we could grab dinner sometime, just the two of us?" Anna's smile widened. "Greg Thornton, are you asking me out on a date?" "I guess I am," Greg replied, feeling a blush creep up his neck. "What do you say?" Anna pretended to consider for a moment before breaking into a grin. "I'd love to, but this time, let's skip the elaborate backstories and just be ourselves, okay?" As they laughed together, locking up the store and stepping out into the cool evening air, Greg felt a sense of excitement for what the future might hold. What had started as a desperate plan had led to something real, something meaningful. And as they walked down the street, their hands brushing against each other, Greg knew that the best chapters of their story were yet to be written. 1 year had passed since the grand opening of Chapter and Verse, and the bookstore had become a beloved fixture in the community. On a crisp autumn evening, the store buzzed with excitement as it hosted a special anniversary celebration. Greg stood near the entrance, greeting guests with a warm smile, He watched as Anna moved through the crowd, her confidence and charm evident in every interaction. The sight of her still made his heart skip a beat, even after months of dating. As the evening progressed, Greg made his way to the small stage set up in the event space. He tapped the microphone, drawing everyone's attention. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate this incredible milestone with us. A year ago, chapter and verse was just a dream. Today, it's a thriving reality, thanks to the vision and hard work of one amazing woman." Greg's eyes found Anna in the crowd, and he smiled. "Anna, could you join me up here, please?" Anna made her way to the stage, a mix of curiosity and surprise on her face. As she stood beside him, Greg took her hand. "Anna, when we first met, it was under unusual circumstances," he said, eliciting chuckles from those who knew their story. "But what started as a charade became the most genuine thing in my life. You've shown me what it means to have passion, to persevere, and to believe in oneself." Greg took a deep breath, his heart pounding. "This past year has been the best of my life, and I know it's because of you. So I have a question to ask you, and this time, it's not pretend." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as Greg lowered himself to one knee, producing a small velvet box from his pocket. Anna's eyes widened, her free hand flying to her mouth. "Anna, will you marry me? For real this time?" Tears glistened in Anna's eyes as she nodded emphatically. "Yes, Greg. Yes!" The store erupted in applause as Greg slipped the ring onto Anna's finger and stood to embrace her. As they kissed, Greg caught sight of his parents in the crowd. Harold and Margaret beamed with genuine happiness, all traces of their former judgment gone. After the excitement died down and the guests began to depart, Greg and Anna found themselves alone in the quiet store. They sat together on the cozy reading nook near the window, Anna's head resting on Greg's shoulder. "I can't believe how much has changed," Anna mused, looking around at the store. Their shared dream come to life. Greg nodded, his arm tightening around her. "It's amazing, isn't it? To think if I hadn't been so desperate to impress my parents that night." Anna laughed softly. "Who would have thought that a fake engagement would lead to a real one?" As they sat there reflecting on their journey, Greg's phone buzzed with a message. It was from his father. "Son, your mother and I couldn't be prouder. Anna is a wonderful addition to our family. Let us know when you're ready to start planning the wedding." Greg showed the message to Anna, both of them touched by Harold's words. "You know," Greg said, "I think this whole experience has changed them too. They've learned to see beyond appearances and expectations." Anna nodded in agreement. "It's like this bookstore. We've created a space where people can be themselves, discover new things, and connect with others. In a way, that's what we've done in our lives too." As the last light of day faded outside, Greg and Anna began to close up the store. They moved in comfortable synchronicity, straightening books and turning off lights. At the door, they paused for a moment, taking in the sight of their shared accomplishment. "Ready to go home?" Greg asked, offering his hand. Anna intertwined her fingers with his, the engagement ring glinting in the soft light. "With you? Always." As they stepped out into the cool evening air, locking the door behind them, both Greg and Anna felt a sense of contentment and excitement for the future. Their story, which had begun with a desperate plan and a chance encounter, had blossomed into something beautiful and real. They walked hand in hand down the quiet street, the stars twinkling above them. The journey hadn't always been easy, but every challenge had brought them closer together. Now, with the bookstore thriving, their relationship strong, and a wedding to plan, Greg and Anna looked forward to writing the next chapters of their life together. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel. Now, how about another one? To watch another nice story, just click on the video appearing on your screen.